the On CloudPulse Pro. So this is essentially the CloudPulse's big brother. This shoe comes in at $180. Is it really worth it? Why didn't you just make these features in the first shoe On? These are the questions I want to figure out and ask in this video. So I'll talk about the shoe's fit, the overall specs, and how it feels in my workout today. Also talk about some comparisons between the CloudPulse versus the CloudPulse Pro. We're here at the shoe store and Coalition Fitness in Chesterfield, Missouri. Let's get to our session and see how these bad boys fit. All right, so I went with my normal size in these 10. I wear a 10 in all of my shoes from On and whatnot, so I'll give you guys some relative sizing thoughts there, especially if you already wear On shoes. These feel pretty good, true to size for the most part with their length. I will say with this synthetic material here, the upper volume feels a little bit low from just the first time putting them on. That is one of those things though that will break in over time, so I would expect that to break in and feel better. This little strappy is interesting. It's cool, you can tuck your laces there. Cool little feature. I think the reason I've been a little bit, not let's say angry, but I would say a little bit more critical of these shoes that they cost more is, I think there's really two thoughts that go through my head. Number one, it's with a lot of these companies, and this might be a tinfoil hat theory, they make these iterations of their core shoes and call them pro or whatever you want to call it, and they charge more. And these shoes typically have better features, etc. And I think maybe because I'm making my own shoe right now, where my mind goes is, why not just add these features in the normal model? Why not just make the normal model really good and add in some extra frills and not wreck people financially? Because my second thought here, and why I think I've been a little bit more sensitive to shoes that do this strategy, is that, you know, it's rough right now in this economy. So to ask people to pay more for a shoe that you've already built, but just has a couple of extra updates when it comes to materials and features, like why not just make that in your core model? Why charge people more for something that I'm sure you could just figure out or do in that first pass? So objectively speaking, these shoes do definitely feel a lot better than the CloudPulse. They just have a little bit more mobility through the midfoot, even though there is a shank, which I'll talk about, or a TPU plate for that matter, which I will discuss. But just from an overall mobility and maneuverability standpoint, and just how they feel on the feet, they definitely feel better. But I think it makes me question once again, like, why couldn't we just do this with the CloudPulse? And maybe it has to do with they needed to innovate, get feedback, but I would be curious why more and more of these companies are doing pro versions of shoes and not just making them great from the jump. All right, so today for our workout, we're starting off with some lateral sled drags and some kneeling kettlebell swings. Getting those hips right, getting those legs right. After the last road trip, so just went on a 2-week road trip, drove 4,600 miles. It's about 2 weeks. What that means is some tight hips. So these are both just to get things moving again, get the legs moving, get the hips feeling right. Low key, one of my favorite kettlebell up variations at this moment. I'll go 8, leg bent. So foot positioning here. You can put it up or put it parallel. For me, my mobility is not the greatest, so I try to work it back as I go. All right, so wrapped up lateral sleds, some half kneeling Russian kettlebells or single arm swings. We're gonna do pogos paired with a drop squat, just to get the knees and legs feeling good again. So aiming for about 10 pogos paired with a squat. We're doing an ascending sled push as well. I really do enjoy the grip of these CloudPulse Pros. They are so grippy. All right, so final set through here. Instead of doing a squat, I'm gonna drop into a lunge. So we'll go 2 on each side. Oh man, knees are feeling saucy. Final push here. 7 plates on there. The oscillation of the sled is making it feel weird. Keeps oscillating on me. All right, so we have a 9-minute EMOM. So it's essentially 3 rounds through. We're gonna do box step overs with the dumbbell, 30-pound dumbbell here. Going for 12 reps, so 6 on each side. Dumbbell snatches, or kettlebell snatches for that matter. We have 10, 5 on each side. And then we have a lunge with the cable with the front foot elevated. And we're gonna go contralateral load, so loading the offset hand in which the leg we're lunging on. And the goal there is to get some internal rotation, just again, to get the hips feeling right, moving through some deeper ranges, etc. But for that, we're gonna do just 8 reps, 4 nice and slow tempos. So it should be nice and smooth. Let's get to it. All right, starting the timer. So if you decide to do these, remember, goal here is to let the weight somewhat pull this offset hip. Nice and smooth. So my right knee is feeling a little saucy, so something I'm thinking about is really feeling that big toe, getting the VMO moving and involved, and letting it track. All right, finishing off with some upper stuff. So I'm gonna do 2 sets through. So dips, we're gonna do 12 reps, and then we're gonna do 6 pull-ups. And then we're gonna do some curls and tricep work. I haven't decided what I'm gonna do yet, but I'm kind of leaving those last 2 free. These are my 2 programmed ones, so 2 sets through here. Oh, 6 round pulleys. Final 3 movements. Single arm behind the back, tricep extensions, aka samurais. And then we have some cable curls with a straight bar. And then we're gonna do some hanging knee raises, or knees to elbow for that matter. Goal here is to pretty much go till failure on both sets through on everything. I haven't done these in a minute. I'm actually pretty stoked. So as I do these, I'm thinking about getting into full extension on the way down and then maintaining a nice even pace. I'm not going for time and attention, flow and getting extension. All right, so some first impressions that I have with the CloudPulse Pro is number 1, I despise the price point. But I do think it is an objectively better shoe than the CloudPulse, and that's for 3 reasons. So if we look at the CloudPulse here, when you look at the forefoot, you have the traditional more cloud tech midsole. Now what ends up happening with this shoe is when you start getting heavier in it, that starts to compress more. You have a traditional midsole here in the CloudPulse Pro. Now you do have some cloud tech here on the medial forefoot. You can kind of see the breaks there. But from a stability standpoint, the shoe does feel better. So if price is not a concern for you between the CloudPulse Pro and the CloudPulse, and you plan to do strength work in this shoe, the CloudPulse Pro would be the move. The second reason why I think this shoe is a little bit better than the CloudPulse is just the outsole tread. Over here in the CloudPulse Pro, you have a mission grip outsole, so just the tread of this shoe, it's a little bit grippier regarding its rubber. The outsole lugs are a little bit deeper, so when it comes to turf work and just giving you a bit more bite, this shoe, I think, does feel better than the CloudPulse. Now that said, if you're just taking classes or training on wooden surfaces or on rubber gym floors, you'll be plenty fine in the CloudPulse. And honestly, it does do a decent job with grip overall on turf, but if you want as much bite as possible, the CloudPulse Pro's outsole is a bit superior. And the third reason why I do think this shoe is a little bit better than the CloudPulse is just the overall feel of this shoe. So with this model, you have 2 TPU layers. You have the speed board up here in the forefoot and the focus board back here through the midfoot and heel. Now the focus board is designed to give you a bit more stability through the midfoot. So for all of my folks out there who like having a little bit more of a stable base regarding just that lockdown feel, and this goes for folks in my opinion who don't necessarily love minimalist shoes, they like something that has a bit more base to it, a bit more midsole, outsole chunk to it. That's where I think the CloudPulse Pro does a good job as well. Just the overall fit and feel of the shoe, it just feels a little bit better on the foot when you're training in different directions. Now another first impression that I have with the CloudPulse Pro is the upper construction is interesting up here in the forefoot. So with this more ripstop synthetic material here, I mentioned this in my sizing section, but you do get a little clicking here. Like You can probably actually pick up on that in my microphone. But it's right at the toe break, and so when you step here, this material kind of breaks into the forefoot, then it relaxes and extends as you step. And I don't think it's gonna be the biggest deal for most folks, but it is one of those things where when you get synthetic materials like this, you can run into issues, especially at the toe break. So that is one of those features where I'm like, dang, for $180, I feel like this shouldn't be a thing. Or it should have been tested a little bit heavier, but I'm curious if other folks have this. And if you have the CloudPulse Pro and you're watching this video, did you experience this issue and did yours break in? Because after an hour and a half of workouts and a full day of wear, mine still hasn't broken in, so I'm wondering where that threshold might be. My third first impression with this shoe, and this kind of piggybacks off my first, is with the focus board back here in the midfoot and heel, and then with the speed board up here, I do feel like this shoe does a good job with overall stability, especially from a lateral context. But I'm interested to see if folks are gonna feel limited at all in this shoe regarding giving you like max flexibility and letting your foot really go through its full ranges of motion. Anytime you get plates or boards in a shoe like this, you always gotta account that they are gonna limit the foot to some degree because they are creating some artificial stability and support. So I'm curious how folks are gonna internalize that. For my training session today, I really enjoyed it. But as a fan of minimalist shoes, but I also see the drawback there. And so that said, if you do invest in the CloudPulse Pro, it might also be worth training barefoot some sessions or using minimalist shoes to give your foot a full range of motion, full breadth of stimulus that you can put onto it while you're training. My fourth first impression with this shoe is I do like that they remade the boot here. So in the CloudPulse, we had more of this traditional padded mesh. The boot here in the CloudPulse Pro almost rivals what's used in the Cloud X4 and the On Cloud 6. I like it. It's a nice toned down feel. I didn't have any issues with rubbing this boot, so I do enjoy that feature with the shoe. My last first impression with the shoe is I do enjoy the gusset and the tongue construction. So an issue that I have with shoes that use a thinner tongue like this, especially thin mesh tongues, is sometimes they're too short. Like in the CloudPulse, one of my gripes was that the tongue was just a bit too short, so it got pulled down at times. In this model, it's a little bit longer and it flares out. But as opposed to being a more rigid mesh, it's actually a little bit softer, and with the tongue gusset, it lays pretty flat on the foot. So I do enjoy that feature, and I do think that's a nice move with On. Now that said, I am still very critical of this shoe. I wish On would have just made these features in the original model. Like, why not just make a really solid, fairly priced model versus doing these pro iterations and whatnot? I think that the construction is objectively better in this shoe, but again, I feel like in this economy, like to justify spending an extra $30 when most folks will be fine in this shoe, it's gonna come down to what your financial standing looks like and what your overall needs are. So before wrapping up this video, I do wanna quickly talk about sizing, and that's gonna be right here. All right, On CloudPulse Pro, sizing and fit thoughts. So I wear a size 10 in all of On shoes, went with a 10 in these as well. These run true to size regarding length. So if you currently wear On shoes or whatever you wear in Nike and Adidas, I would go for the same size in these. When it comes to their overall width, I have an E to double E width foot. They are like right on the money for my foot. I can feel my pinky toe pressing into this synthetic material here. And something also to note with this shoe is because we do have this overlay over the toe box and this extended outsole layer, you will likely feel like the toe box has a bit of a low volume or a little bit of a snugger fit from the jump. That should break in. They have broken in decently well for me. But one fit caveat that I do have with them, speaking of just potential drawbacks, is with material like this that's a bit more synthetic, more ripstop feeling, it does have a little bit of a click here on the medial forefoot. So when you're stepping, you can kind of feel this click at that toe break. And that's par for the course with this type of material. But overall fit and sizing wise, I do think they feel better than the CloudPulse, the normal model. They move a little bit better with the feet, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows, and I'll explain more in my full video on YouTube with these shoes, and then also when I compare them to the CloudPulse. All right, guys, so that wraps up my first impression of the On CloudPulse Pro. It is an objectively better shoe than the CloudPulse, and I do like the updates in this model. But that said, I'm still critical of it. I think to roll out a Pro version that is objectively this much better than the core version and then charge $30 more, it just kind of rubs me the wrong way. And my question is like, why not just roll out these features in the core model and give everybody a really strong shoe without making them pay an arm and a leg? I think if you are fine with your financial standing and you're between the CloudPulse and CloudPulse Pro, go Pro. But for everybody else who just needs a shoe for general HIIT workouts, classes, etc., the CloudPulse will work. So if you can find them on sale, go with that shoe. But that said, I will have a full review coming out with this shoe very, very soon. Stay tuned, guys. I appreciate y'all for being here. See you guys in the next one. Peace.